This is a hard-hitting question. Hopefully you're ready for it right off the bat. What is your favorite social media platform?
Oh gosh, I'm a social media nerd. We are more than the 9 to 5. Yes, it's important that, obviously entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. However, it should be an opportunity for everyone.
What particular steps can business owners take to help build long-term financial stability?
It starts with strategy.
Welcome to Green Country Conversations, the podcast where we hear about the stories and learn about the people that make Northeast Oklahoma truly great. I'm your host, Maverick, owner of Bison Ridge Insurance, and today we have on an exciting guest, someone who is helping business owners, solopreneurs, and working professionals break free of traditional 9 to 5 and build the lives they don't need to take a vacation from. But first, let's take a minute and thank our sponsors.
Hi there. This is the point of the podcast where I'd like to thank our amazing sponsor, but we don't have one yet. If you're a business owner and you're interested in sponsoring the Green Country Conversations podcast and getting your business information out to hundreds of listeners across the Green Country area, please reach out to me. My email is maverick@bisonridgeinsurance.com. Let's avoid this awkwardness next time.
Joining us today is Michele Meza, better known as Coach Michele D, is a business strategist and leadership expert and motivational speaker with over 28 years of leadership experience. As the founder of Luksi Coaching and Consulting, she works with high-level executives, emerging leaders, and CEOs, providing business coaching and strategy, entrepreneurship coaching, and leadership development. She's also a 2-time international best-selling author and a passionate advocate for generational wealth, breaking cycles of poverty, and supporting Indigenous communities. Michele, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Maverick, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Definitely. Well, I know that as someone who as a young entrepreneur, I have really leaned on mentors and business coaches throughout my career so far. And so I know that this conversation is going to be really impactful for our listeners, because I think there's a lot of people who maybe have never went down this pathway or had these conversations. And so I think that there'll be a lot that they can get just from our one episode that will probably lead them to reaching out to you. So I'm super excited to get started here.
Awesome.
Let's get started with a couple rapid fire questions. So this is a hard-hitting question. Hopefully you're ready for it right off the bat. What is your favorite social media platform?
Oh gosh, I'm a social media nerd. My favorite social media platform is Instagram.
Instagram? Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this. I had a conversation with another business owner the other day, and he had a different answer than me, so I'm curious to see what you think. Do you think of YouTube as a social media platform?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, me too. That's how and behind the curtain here, that's what I consume the most content on completely. I constantly am watching YouTube, but I could replace YouTube with any streaming service and feel completely fine because I watch so much of it. But he was like, no, it's just a video platform. And I was like, man, I don't see it that way. I completely see it as a social media platform at this point, the way you can promote yourself and promote your business. And I think that if you're not using it that way, you're probably leaving some meat on the bone that could be used for your business for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, my business has really grown, and so I downsized after COVID and rebranded and stuff, and so I'm slowly building back my team, but that's one thing that's on the to-do list for this year is to build up my Instagram platform. I usually stream, I repurpose my content and everything, like from podcasts like this and everything. But I'm really trying to focus on YouTube this year. I think it definitely is a missed opportunity for a lot of people because everything is
sure.
on. And now there's lots of exposure for YouTube. It's well known. So, yeah.
Okay, so our next rapid fire question. If you had to give a TED Talk tomorrow with no prep whatsoever, they were just like, hey, we had a cancellation. We need Michele to come in and do a TED Talk. What would you pick your topic to be?
The 2 things you need to survive as an entrepreneur.
Man, it sounds like you're already prepared. I love that. I already got the topic and the title and everything. That's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like every moment is a TED Talk, so I try to be
That's a good way to approach life. Just all my moments are TED Talks. I love that. If you could pick one entrepreneur, living or dead, to have coffee with, who would it be?
Oh, gosh. I would have to resort back to my coach because every successful coach has a coach or a mentor.
Right.
And that is David Meltzer. He's such an amazing and humble guy. I've met him in person a couple times, but obviously our coaching sessions are remote. But I would love to just sit him down for a day and have coffee and just pick his brain and just talk about everything. He's such a
That's amazing. And he's a business coach as well?
He is, yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I've never heard of him. I'll have to look into his content. If you could explain business strategy to a 5-year-old, how would you do it? So this question originates from the fact that I have a 4, soon to be 5-year-old who constantly asks questions. And I'm always curious to see how people would break this down. I have yet to be able to explain to him insurance because it's such a broad topic, but he's still convinced that I sell instruments. And so we're just rolling with it. We're going to eventually cross that bridge when we get here. But how would you explain your business to a 5-year-old?
I love the question. I've never been asked that question before. However, as a single mom and just the belief system in, building that legacy and generational wealth, I've always involved my kids in my businesses. And so
Exactly.
I've actually lived this out. And what I would say, what a business strategy is it's kind of like a game, right? And you have a football game and you have the players and a coach. And so the business owner is the coach and the players are the people. And your customers are also could be the players that, depending if you're a solopreneur or not. But you need a game plan. You need a plan to play the game from start to
Right.
finish. And so that's how I explain business strategy to a 5-year-old.
That's great. That's even great for me because all the time, I think weekly, I refer to business as the game, right? The game we're all playing. It's the game I love. I say this probably in every episode of this podcast, but insurance is not something I'm crazy passionate about. Obviously I love insurance, but like if I wasn't a 9-year-old kid saying, oh, I want to be an insurance agent. However, I do remember being very young saying I wanted to own a business, and I always knew I wanted to be a part of this game. And so you saying it's a strategy for the game, like it speaks to me perfectly. Like I'm like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense. So you focus a lot on helping people escape the 9-to-5 rat race. That's something that I'm passionate about, is doing it at a young age. As a young entrepreneur, being out of that, I'm like, everyone should at least try it at least once to get out of that world. What's the biggest mindset shift that someone has to have to start that journey?
Oh, that's a great question. So yes, it definitely starts with the mindset. And it's easy to fall into that trap where, you just get up and go to work and you go through this monotonous life and it's expected, everything is planned out. But after a while, you just feel, I really truly believe that us as humans, we're meant for more. God put more of that inside of that desire for more inside of us. And, we are more than the 9-to-5. Yes, it's important that, obviously entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. However, it should be an opportunity for everyone. Everyone has
Right.
the same opportunity to wake up and feel like, you know what, this isn't all I'm supposed to do. This isn't fully living out our purpose. And so that's how I look at escaping the 9-to-5, because some people's purpose is working for someone else and helping them, achieve that mission that they set out to do as an organization. There's nothing wrong with that. However, it does, in order to shift your mindset, you have to look outside the box. You have to think outside the box. You have to really dig deep into your soul and, meditate, pray about it, and figure out what your purpose is. What is your why? Because your why gets you out of the bed in the morning. And, you have to figure out what your passions are. And some people have multiple passions, and that's okay. I don't think everyone should be stuck with this one niche or, and I speak about that a lot. A lot of people argue with me because I feel like if you focus too much on one thing, you work yourself out of a business.
For sure.
But yeah, it definitely starts with that mindset shift to really think about, how can I use my talents in order to fuel my passion, to fuel my purpose, to live out my purpose.
Yeah, that why has to be a big driving factor, because we both know as business owners, you're going to have days upon weeks upon even maybe months that are rough during the business, right? And you have to have that why that gets you through those rough times. And that's exactly what you're saying. So I love that answer. Kind of bouncing off that, let's get into some industry talk here. I want to talk about building a life that you don't need a vacation from. So let's start by you just kind of telling us what inspired you to start your business. What inspired you to kind of get started with it?
Oh, you have some great questions today. Okay. I truly believe that entrepreneurs they always have the entrepreneurial spirit, and I really see a lot of it developed, or it sparks that ignition in kids, and then it hits somewhere between middle school and high school to where it really comes alive, and people are thinking about it. And of course, society tells us to go, to finish school, to go to college, or to go to a trade school and work for somebody else. But if you start paying attention to really what lights up your world and gets you out of bed in the morning, that's really what you should be focusing on. And so, building a life that you don't need a vacation from, that goes with internal happiness. And, a lot of people think, I have a certification in mindset, and a lot of people think, and they get stuck in this, that you have to have this big complex paradigm shift in your head. From going from this type of life to the other type of life. But really, it's really about the thoughts that go through your head. You have to cast down those negative thoughts, those imposter syndrome, telling yourself, oh, I'm not good enough to do that. I'll never be able to hit, 7 figures. I'll never become a millionaire. You have to pay attention to what you're feeding your mind, because most likely we end up saying what we think, right? We manifest those thoughts into existence by saying those things out loud, or telling people, or out of frustration. If something, like we did go to try to, live out our dreams, and it didn't work out at that time.
Yeah.
The other part of that is timing. I really feel like you really have to pay attention to things. You have to feel that shift inside of you, and that uneasiness or that peace. And that's kind of how I live life. And then it goes back to your passion and your purpose, like we were talking about in the last question. You have to figure out what that is that you really love. And over Luksi Coaching and Consulting, that is actually my 5th business. And so over time, I realized that whatever, I might have been good at this or good at that, different types of skill sets I've learned through my W-2 career, or I'm just naturally good at it. I was able to start a business because that's what I do, but I wasn't passionate about it. And so when I rebranded and over COVID, it allowed me to really stop and think, what do I really like to do? And then tell myself no, or say no to everything that I don't really like to do. And that was a hard decision, because a lot of the things, marketing is a big spectrum of things, and so I had to say no to a lot of the things that involved marketing. I do still focus on marketing, but it's the stuff that I love to do, and it has the most impact with people, because for me, I'm big on impact. I want to see transformation. That's what gets me up out of bed. Just seeing lives transformed, businesses transformed, mindsets transformed, when they go from, I kind of want to do this side hustle, but I don't think it'll ever pan out. From going to that to, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think that I could replace my full-time job.
Right.
Now that's what in my perspective, that's what I mean by living a life that you don't have to take a vacation from, because we all strive, money is great, but we really, the root of what we're all trying to seek here is freedom of our time, so we can give it back to our families, so we don't have to wake up on Sunday evening, being so stressed from anxious thoughts and stuff that we can't even go to sleep because we dread Monday morning.
Yeah. It's crazy that you say that. I'm not even joking. I had this conversation with my wife this weekend that, I saw a Facebook post or Instagram post that was talking about, the Sunday scaries are starting to hit or something like that. And I was like, I am so extremely grateful that God gave me this ability to I've never experienced the Sunday scaries with Bison Ridge Insurance. It's not something that, now granted, does that mean I'm not stressed? No, not at all. I'm typically always stressed, but that's kind of comes with being a business owner, right? But there's a different level in being stressed about something you're passionate about, or stressed because, there's a big, opportunity on the horizon that you're chasing, and being stressed and having this Sunday scaries because you just dread going to work. And I'm so grateful. And I want so many people to be able to experience the feeling of like actually being ready to go to work on Monday. Like I love my kids, I love my wife, but I like getting to work at, 9 a.m. on Monday morning, because I know I have a lot I have to get done, and that gives me fulfillment. You kind of talked about it a lot there. I would be curious, what is the one thing that you're extremely passionate about when it comes to your business? Because you talked about having to say no to the things that maybe you were passionate about but weren't like your number one thing, or were beneficial to other business owners. But like, what's that thing that you're passionate about for those business clients that you're working with?
I'm most passionate about the transformation. So when someone comes to me and they're saying, okay, I need coaching or I need a strategy, everyone has a starting point. But after working with them and teaching them to open up their mind and to have that paradigm shift into seeing, oh my gosh, like I'm meant for so much more. I didn't see these blind spots, right? So I help them identify their blind spots in a way to where it opens up and transforms their mind. Because, when people are stuck in one position, they can't really see what's the life ahead of them. They can't think about leaving the rat race, leaving their 9 to 5, or living a life that they don't need a vacation from. So all those, little buzzwords that people are used to hearing now, a lot of people just don't know how to do it. And so what I love is walking them through that process. And that's really exciting to me, because when they get that aha moment and I see that, I almost wish I could take a picture or grab a video every time I see that aha moment, because it's just so amazing. I literally jump up and down like it happened to me, and they laugh
That's
at me.
amazing.
And this is a conversation, when we're around networking groups and stuff, and they mention working with me. They're like, yeah, she gets just as excited or even more excited about my business than I do. I'm like, yeah, because it's just, when they see it, then things start to happen, because then they're like, okay, I have a strategy in place now. I have a game plan. I have action items, and I'm actually making progress towards my goals. And that's so exciting.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I think that the next obvious question of that is, you're talking about, your clients getting through that breakthrough, that barrier that's holding them back. So, obviously don't divulge too much because it's your business, and I understand that, but give people a little bit of a taste of, how do you help your clients break through those mental barriers? How are you helping that client have that aha moment that they thought they would never have?
Man, you have some great questions. So how I help them through that, I have different programs that I offer, and I do it specifically for, I've spent a lot of years asking for feedback and reviews and all that stuff. So I literally have taken all the feedback that I've received over the years, and I've really refined and developed my systems and my product offerings related to that. So, I offer mindset coaching. Obviously, I offer business coaching. So it really, the first step is really meeting with me and on a call, a virtual call, and really trying to walk through and talk through, okay, what are my goals? What do I need? And some of them don't know what they need, but of course it's up to me to identify that and ask, shift the conversation, ask those important questions. And then from there, I follow up with them and I determine, hey, here's some things that I suggest. And most of them are, 100% of them actually are like, you know what, that's really what I need. And then I also offer, strategy sessions, because a lot of people they're developed enough to where they're not stuck in their mindset. They just don't know. They can't see past their blind spots. And so I help them, or maybe they don't know who they're talking to, or maybe they need refinement of their message, or their content needs to be different. So then we dig deep in that strategy session. And then of course, I've built a new program that I'm actually working on releasing, and it's basically it's called a Done With You business system. So it walks you everything. Like if you are a new business, or you're kind of stagnant, or you're in a side hustle mode and you want to get out of your 9 to 5, then you for the first 90 days, it's basically building out a business in your marketing, because there's two critical elements within the strategy that everyone needs. It doesn't matter what industry. It doesn't matter if you're a coach, if you offer services, or if you offer products. You need a system. So you need systems set up, and then you need marketing. And so those two critical components, that's how I've developed this system. And of course, after that 90 days, they're up and running, and they are, they're speaking to their target audience, and they're engaging with them, because it's, nowadays social media is about building a community, and that goes to your online digital footprint. A lot of people have heard digital footprint, but they think Google My Business, or they think, social media, let me throw up a couple platforms and I'll be done with it. But no, it's really building that networking community online with them, and really having a place for your customers to have conversations with you outside of what you offer. And I think that's critical. And once people get that, they're like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I can jumpstart this. And now I have a system in place, and I understand how I need to market and to talk to my customers, which is also known as a brand voice. I have a full brand that just launched, and now I can continue it and grow to 6+ figures. And that's really what I specialize in.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Because I think there's a couple things that I got from that. One, I think as business owners, sometimes we forget when we're in the work, it's hard to see the forest from the trees, right? And you need someone who can come in and be like, hey, this is the path. This is kind of what I'm seeing from a consumer standpoint or from another business standpoint. And the other thing I think about is, and maybe this is something you see across business owners, but starting this business that I have, Bison Insurance at 24 years old, I got very quickly to think that, I only know the way to do this, right? Because I'm the one that has created all my SOPs out of thin nothing. I'm not a franchise. I didn't get a playbook whenever I opened, right? But so many times I look back and my wife would say something, or my parents would say something, or a friend would say something that was not involved in insurance at all. And that has been added into, my processes, or because they're coming at it from a consumer standpoint where, as an insurance agent, I think, it has to be done this way, but it doesn't. Or as a business owner, it has to be done this way, but it doesn't. And so having that conversation with someone who is not in the day-to-day business is so powerful. So I love that. My next question is, I was looking through my questions before, and I'm really excited to kind of hear your input on this, because I strongly feel a certain way about it, but I'm curious to see what you think. Obviously, meeting with a lot of business owners, you see the mindset. You kind of are probably pretty familiar with the type of people that become entrepreneurs. So do you think that anyone could be an entrepreneur, or do you think it takes a certain type of personality, a certain type of person to be an entrepreneur? Now, obviously, I know the opportunity is there for everyone, but to be a successful entrepreneur, what are you kind of seeing? What are some key, personality traits that you see in people?
Oh, that's good. That's a deep question. I love this. Yeah. Yes and no. So yes, no meaning a different. You can edit this part out.
Yeah, you're good.
So yes, because I say yes and no, because no, if you are not coachable, then no. I think it's really important. It goes back to finding your purpose and your why and things like that. If you can answer that question, then yes, you can. If you feel that you can't be taught anything, you're not coachable and things like that, then, it won't go very far. Yes, you can start it, but it just won't go very far unless you are naturally good at strategy. You're naturally good at creating and implementing systems and marketing, and knowing exactly who your target audience is and what you're saying to them. As far as personality traits, yes, I think we do have a lot of traits that are the same. Now I've seen different people, like as far as, I guess the common myth is you have to be an extrovert. And that's just not true. I know a lot of introverts who are really, really good entrepreneurs and run really good, they've built millions in their business, but they don't want to be on the front end because obviously they're introverted. Right. So I really think it's a good idea to really, of course, to work with a coach if you don't know your skill sets and you can't identify what you're good at, and you need a little help. Sometimes people just need a little help pulling that out. It's within them, but they can't really think. It's almost like you said earlier, they can't see the forest for the trees. And a lot of times that's true. They get stuck in this repetitive thought process. And so that sometimes they just need a little help getting out of it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think strongly about this just because, if you had asked me this 4 years ago when I started this business, I'd have been like, everyone should open their own business. It's the thing to do, right? And then over time, I've really started to realize that, yeah, the opportunity is there for everyone, but it's not everyone's calling. Kind of like you said earlier, some people's calling truly is to be a 9-to-5 worker that helps people build businesses, right? I think there's kind of two, and I'm not the professional on this, so if you're listening to this is Maverick stupid advice, but I think there's doers, and then, there's dreamers and there's doers, right? And I think that the dreamers have to have the doers to help their business succeed, right? Because as a business owner, I'm a dreamer. Like I could dream huge, like big, scary dreams that scare everyone when I open my mouth and tell them, they're like, that's crazy that you would even say that you could accomplish that. But I need help I need doers to help me do that, right? Because I can't do it all on my own. And I think back to when I started, and I think to some of my buddies who, we fresh out of college and they were, maybe not working in like a career that they wanted to be in. And I was like, just open a business. But you have to realize that not everyone wants to have the stress or the continued, the hustle that you always have to be on to be a business owner. And so I think that the opportunity is there for everyone, but I don't think it's everyone's calling. So I love your answer. That was really, really great. We've talked about it a couple of times. We talked about it in the intro. I want to kind of get into generational wealth and business growth. Why is generational wealth such a key focus for your work?
Oh gosh. I didn't realize I was so passionate about it until I started building my own generational wealth. And I'm meaning that, and I'm talking about financial literacy in particular.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember at 12, so my grandma was part of the Indian removal, and she at third grade, she was pulled from that school when she was adopted out and forced to work in the fields. And the potato fields, cotton fields, things like that. And so she never got her education, and she didn't know how to read. Now here she was, I think at that time she was like in her 80s, and I realized that she couldn't read. And so, that's kind of where it started for me, because I realized like, wow, what type of legacy is she leaving? Yeah, she's worked hard, but in my family, I've noticed a lot of missed opportunities for generational wealth. And knowledge, it's really true. Like the lack of knowledge, generations perish without knowledge. And I just, inside of me at 12 years old, I wanted to change that. I didn't want to. I realized that I was going to be on the front lines. So obviously, the person on the front lines, we get hit the hardest, and it's so hard. And some of us we might build it out, but we never get to benefit from that generational wealth. Right. However, our kids, grandkids. So that's where it started for me, is with actual literacy. And then as I found myself divorced with 2 young kids, I realized that my parents didn't teach me about money. And, rest in peace, they're both passed. And it's just ignorance, they didn't know, so how could they teach me? And so over time, as a single mom, you have to figure it out. Like you're kind of forced to figure it out. And that, between putting myself through college and, just really pinching pennies as a single mom, I'm like, there's got to be more to life than this. And so I really got in, and I started with my credit, because I realized like that's when the credit scores and the bureaus and all that started to really come into play. And now everything relates to your credit score, even employment for some people. So I knew that was going to be important. And so I started teaching my kids that when they're in middle school. And then I went to personal finances. I'm like, okay, a budget is important. You have to figure out, you have to know where you're at. And that really helps me with my business. And so I run debt-free businesses, and I teach my clients to do the same thing. And people are just blown away. They don't understand that you can be debt-free. Brick and mortar is a little different, and there's good debt and bad debt, but I'm specifically talking about bad debt. And really, it's taken me all of my 30s into my 40s to really dig deep and really thoroughly understand what financial literacy is, and then how to teach that and how to reverse things in my family so I can leave a legacy that truly lives out and continues. And so, it started with me. And now, when my oldest daughter, she's graduating college in May of this year. And
That's awesome.
Thank you. She is already equipped, with some wealth building that I've set up for her. And then when she finishes chiropractic school, she'll able to, either withdraw some of that money and buy, for her wedding, a house, different things like that. So I think
amazing.
it starts there. Yeah, and of course, life insurance. I'm sure you've dealt with that too. But all of those things are important. And so, when you think of generational wealth, a lot of people, that's a big thing. That's pretty general. That's pretty broad. And I love how Jimmy Jones with the Dallas Cowboys, his story and how he started the Dallas Cowboys. And his kids are actively involved, and now his daughter's running the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, and so all of even his grandchildren are now actively involved in that business. And to me, that's a great example of generational wealth, and that it can be done from nothing. And that's what I want to encourage everyone, every listener today, that you can start from nothing. I have started it even as a single mom. Has it been easy? Absolutely not. Have I wanted to give up several times? Yes, but like Babe Ruth said, the people can't beat the man who never quits. And that's really, I love baseball. So that's really stuck with me all these years. I heard that in college, and I'm like, that's right. As long as I never quit, I'm a winner.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that you having that conversation is really big because at least from my standpoint in my industry, numbers and the finances of businesses. Now, obviously, you don't have to put everything out there, but I think a lot of times people think of it as, maybe taboo, or they just don't want to talk about it. But really, when we have those conversations and open up that door to have those talks with people, I think it's really, really impactful because you don't know what you don't know. And as someone who started a business with, none of my family members owned businesses. My mom and grandma and all of them were, teachers. And so it was like, I didn't know any of this. And so having people who were willing to have those conversations with me was really, really impactful. And I applaud you for doing that. And then I think also something you touched on earlier, a big impact, right, is having your kids involved in your work, right? And so something, I plan on doing my boys as they get now. Granted, my oldest is 4, so it's like I can't do too much with him right now. But even now, like always having the conversation of what dad does at work and involving them in your business, not just saying, "Oh, I worked today." I worked. No, I'm going to tell him, "Hey, I sold a policy to this client. I helped him with this claim." So that they can have those understanding of what it means to go out and work and start to have that. Because I think if we're always just being nonchalant and not having the conversation with our kids, we're only doing a disservice to them in the long run. My next question would be, what particular steps can business owners take to help build long-term financial stability?
It starts with strategy. I had a business I started back in 2012, and by the end of 2013, early 2014, it had blown up way beyond my dreams or desires. I was actually just trying to solve my own problem, because we go into business to help people and to solve problems, right? In this case, I was trying to solve my own problem that I had, within my household. And I failed, meaning I crashed and burned. I had all these opportunities, but I had no channels to steadily pivot. And I had to walk away from it and I didn't get that opportunity again because it, dealt with retail and getting my brand in stores nationwide and stuff. So what that taught me was I need to have a strategy. And so that's why I'm so passionate about having systems in place, having a plan in place, because you can turn anything. You can even have a laundromat, or you can have a car detailing business. And you can make it sustainable. And that's what a lot of people don't think about. They think just in front of them or the next year. And so when you work with me, I literally take you to the short term, mid-range, long term. And we talk about it all the time. And we do status checks to make sure that whatever you're doing on the daily matches or is pushing you towards your long-term plans. And of course, having that exit strategy. But yeah, any business can be sustainable, but you have to have a plan in place, and then you have to have systems in place.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that you're saying you have to have a strategy and a plan. There was a quote that I saw online. I actually just Googled it real quick because I wanted to make sure I had it right. And I'll change it a little bit, but it's, money is like a spouse. If you don't pay attention to it every day, it's going to leave, right? And I think that what you're saying is exactly that. You have to make sure you know where your money's at. You have to have the plans, the strategies for how you want to spend that money. Because if you're just like, oh, I'm making money, it's going in the account, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I spent all that money and I don't have any more. And I think that that's a kind of a stupid quote, but I think that it speaks to exactly what you're saying. That plan and that strategy is really, really important for business owners and not business owners. I think everyone needs to have that strategy for their money. How do you help, or how have you seen businesses? What's the best way for businesses to get out of that side hustle, the survival mode, and get into real growth? That's kind of going off of what you're talking about. Even that laundromat or that detailing business can go from, a side hustle to a sustainable business. So what is your kind of mindset, or what's the best way for businesses to get there?
Yeah, the best way to get there is you have to develop a strategy. I know that I've said that many times, but that's where it starts. So,
well, it's important. You need to say it a lot because it's important.
Yeah, it's no different than writing out a business plan. Most people are familiar with the business plan, the actual physical document that you'll need, especially if you're borrowing money from a lender for your business. But, you have to, and then write it out. So once you have a strategy developed, you have to write it out. And then all your goals and everything are based on your strategy, your vision board, your mindset, what you do on the daily, who you hire, how you grow. And I've been fortunate to grow my business to multiple six figures. So what I do is I take that business model and I've been able to replicate it. And that's what I do for my clients. And you have to take it from strategy, and then that's where I came up with the new service I'm offering with the program, the business system, is a lot of people take that strategy, but they don't know how to implement it. And so what that program does is it marries the two. So you have a strategy and then you have the implementation. And I've noticed over the years, that's where a lot of people get lost. And then I work with them throughout that process, and the first part, of course, is the first 90 days. And then if you want to continue on, there's an entire business system that carries it out to a year. And what that does is that teaches you how to run your business and how to use those systems, the messages that you need to say so your target audience can understand what you say, right? Because we can know who our target, and some people do know, they're very clear on who their target audience is, but they're saying the wrong things to them, right? It's almost like speaking French to people who speak Chinese. They don't understand that, and they just look at you like the two don't mix. And so, once you understand what you do and then you understand who you're talking to, then it's important to figure out, okay, what am I going to say? And then build your content strategy around that. So build your topics that go on social media, your website, even podcasts like this. I mean, I've been invited on a lot, but I choose certain ones because it doesn't fit my content pillars and the way that I want to go with it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, and I know you said you're saying strategy a lot, but I think it's really important. And, my wife and I talk about this all the time when we're reading the Bible or we're talking to our youth kids at church, that if it's said multiple times, that means it's of importance and you need to take a note and say, hey, this is something that's really important, right? Because I think ultimately you could be the best strategist in the world. You can have the best strategy. It can make you, Elon Musk. But if Elon Musk had a strategy and he never implemented it, it's just a dream, right? And I think that's really important for people to know, is that you have to have those two. That's what you're talking about, marrying the two together and making that that next step in your business. That's really, really important. So we've talked a lot about different strategies and being a business owner, but I want to kind of talk about leadership and branding and the impact it has on your business. You talk a lot about transforming minds and brands. What does that mean for your practice? Or what does that mean in practice? I'm sorry.
Okay. Transformation is the heart of my mission, right? It's the heart of my business. It starts with the mind. It ends up being translated into building 6+ figure brands. And, I think it's important to note that, when we're talking about, like you said a few minutes ago with, it's like a spouse, it's anything that you pay attention to, it's almost like watering your grass, right? Grass is greener when it's watered, when you stay in it. And I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people do. I think they have a misunderstanding as to, oh, I built my business, it's going to just run itself. And that's where a lot of people get discouraged and they want to walk away, or some quit. Or they stay stagnant and they don't grow. And so, and some
Right.
people are great at executing, and that's why I had a successful W-2 career, is because I helped those dreamers, I helped those visionaries execute whatever they were trying to envision and get out there. And then I led other people, and that's part of leadership, because leadership looks different to a lot of people, and it can be different to a lot of people. There's different types of leadership out there. I focus on servant leadership. I think that is also the heart of my business, is really serving others, because when you serve others, when you put others first, it will come back to you. And that's what it has done
Right.
for me over the past 15 years with my business.
That's amazing. So we've talked a couple times about qualities that business owners, need to have to be successful, and it's come up a couple times. But I think the willingness of being coached, the willingness of the open-mindedness of walking in and saying, "Hey, I don't know this. I need help." Why do you feel like that is so important to being a business owner? Because I know, like, for myself, and as you kind of think of an answer here, for myself, like, starting young and not having, like I said, anyone in my family that's ever been in business, I had to make it a priority for myself to go out and find people who have done what I want to do a lot better than what I'm doing it, and ask them how they did it. Right. And so I vividly remember the first, year or two of my business. I had a calendar that I kept that literally had like every month I was trying to meet with, and really it was every week, trying to meet with a business owner that was across the nation that, I had seen on a forum, or I had seen on a Facebook post, or I had seen on a podcast, and just being like, "Hey, I have this one specific thing that I'm struggling with. You seem like you've already figured it out because you've been in business for 25 plus years. I don't know what I'm doing. Help me." And a lot of times you don't realize how helpful or how willing people are to be helpful to that. So kind of talk to me about why you think that's so important for business owners.
It is extremely important, and to me it's a requirement, because it speaks a lot of your integrity and your character. And a lot of people are thinking, what does that have anything to do? What does being coachable have anything
Yeah.
to do with my integrity and my character? But it has everything to do with it, because I have seen over the years as a leader, and I've witnessed other leaders leading with ego and not with their heart or with others in mind. And so that's what I talk about servant leadership so much, is because when you lead with your ego and your pride, it gets in the way of lots of things. And I've seen a lot of business owners run their businesses into the ground because they allow their pride to just eat them up. And they end up not seeing the gaps in the business, and they don't know how to close them. So they just keep on and don't allow others to say, "Hey, I can fix that." And I always encourage people, most of the time, entrepreneurs as a whole, we are natural leaders, right? And we most of us execute. We're visionaries, but we also it's like a balance thing. So we are visionaries, but then we also execute well. And if you don't have any of those qualities, and not everybody does as an entrepreneur, that doesn't mean you're not a good entrepreneur. It means what you need to do is hire and delegate those things that you're not.
Yeah.
And so when you're coachable, you can have someone who's already successful and they've walked down that road, they've been down that path before. They can tell you your blind spots, and they can say, "Hey, if you adjust this, or if you hire this instead of doing it all yourself and delegate that out, it'll free up your time to go focus on and to get more business." Or if you're not good at sales, you obviously need sales. It's an important part of your business, any business. Then go hire it. And that's what I did, because sales is not my jam. I know it's needed.
Yeah.
And so I go find the best people out there who love it. I mean, why
Right.
punish myself? And that's what my coach had told me, "Michele, the first thing you need to do is to delegate that out. That's clearly not your
Yeah.
passion. Your attitude
Yeah.
changes when you talk about sales, much less I can't imagine being on the front end of it." And so that's what
Yeah.
I did. And that's the best thing I could have ever done, because you find people who are passionate about it, who are really, really good at it. And I've been fortunate enough to find
Yeah.
those people. and it's amazing. And it's so good as a business owner when you hire people and you find the right people in those positions to sit back and watch them grow and blossom, because that's their passion, that's their jam, and you can just see the light just really ignite their faces, and you hear it in their voices, and all of a sudden everything's better and they're happier. And then the people that they talk to, the prospective clients of yours, they're happy because they have that good experience, because that's one thing that I think we all need to shift our focus on, is creating just an amazing customer experience. Forget the great product or service that we offer. They need to have that great experience with you. And I think that's the best advice I could give for 2025.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think that because like you said, being a business owner, you're typically, pretty strong-headed. You're like, I can figure this out on my own. I started this business, and I'm kind of speaking to myself here, like I'm preaching to myself. But having to humble yourself and know that there's people who are better than you out there at things that they're really passionate about is the way that you make your business, go from whatever level it's at to the next level you want to reach. So that's really, really good. So we've talked a couple of times. You've mentioned that you had, successful businesses in the past. You've had a W-2 career that was successful. So what's one business lesson you learned the hard way? And maybe give a little bit of a story with it if possible.
Oh gosh. Well, I did talk a little bit about the failed business. I'll elaborate on that.
Yeah.
So that was my biggest lesson, because I didn't have a plan. I just went with it. Like I said, I found myself on the verge of divorce, but my husband at the time would not give me money for. I had one daughter growing out of an outfit that she needed for a performance, and then the other one had a birthday outfit and she needed it. Yeah. And I'm like, well, just make it myself. I grew up really poor, and my mom made all my clothes, and so I grabbed her sewing machine and I got busy. And before you know it, I had everybody asking me, "Do you sell these? You should sell these." And for a solid year, I'm like, "Nope," because I was a little bitter about that, having to do that out of course, And I'm like, "Nope, not gonna do it. I just needed that for my daughters needed stuff." And so I had one friend who just kept on at me, "Michele, you're really talented and you're good at business. You need to do this. You need to launch it." So I did. And then the next year I was approached by Zulily. That's an online, they have different brands and everything. And then
that's cool.
All my designs sold out within 10 minutes. I was not expecting that. And then they kept asking me for more, to show up for more events. And so you had to make all of that ahead of time. And that's the thing with retail that I don't, a lot of people know, is you've got to front the money and you've got to make all of that stuff ahead of time, just hoping that it sells out, right?
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, it did, but the hard part of that is I didn't have a plan after that. I didn't have a strategy. And so then Dillard's approached me, and the buyer was like, "Hey, I saw your one of your designs hit #1 on Pinterest of the most pins." Wow. I don't know how they found that out. I guess they pay attention to those stats or something. Anyway.
Yeah.
We want your bridal, because I had a bridal line too, and we want a bridal line, and we want a ready to wear, which is like for school and stuff. And I'm like, okay, no problem. So I ran out of money. I went to Dallas Fashion District, did all that stuff, found the people who can remake all of my patterns and stuff, and literally to this day, half of my clothing line is still on, it's probably in boxes now, but I ran out of money midway through this, because Dillard's wanted all of their markets. So that was I remember one particular outfit had 2,400 units. So 2,400 items of just one design. And that wasn't even bridal. Bridal was a totally different beast. But and then of course, you've got to have storage, right? And I didn't think about that. Even though my W-2 career started out in the trucking transportation, I just honestly didn't think about that. I didn't think it would grow that fast, and I didn't have a plan. So of course, after I ran out of money, I'm like, you know what? I couldn't get access to capital, so that launched another business. And so the reason why I'm telling you this is because I ended up opening a business loan brokerage, because I realized that me and lots of other business owners could not get access to capital. And this was right before COVID. Right. This was 2018, 2019. And so I was successful at that. And so I partnered with the SBA, And I only focused on them because I built a really good relationship with the SBA, and they were, I was getting my applicants prepared, my clients, with all of the documentation, everything they needed, their business plan, all that set up. And then they would just be sent over to SBA, and then they would get their SBA backed loans. Well, then COVID hit.
That's awesome.
And I put all my eggs in one basket. And so that's why people argue with me about niche down, only pick one thing and be really good at it. Yeah, that's great. I mean, for the most part, you do want to. But I'm an example. I ended up COVID shut down my business. So that's why I rebranded Luksi and went that way, because I was just like, wow, how did I get here knowing what I know, and I know better, I was just beating myself up. And so just working on my own mindset, that's when I picked up certifications in coaching. And I'm like, I don't want anybody to feel the way that I felt during that time.
That's amazing. Well, all I hear through this whole thing is, you are the business coach that you needed during that time, right? So if someone's going through that and they're like, I don't know, like my business is really expanding. I don't want it to grow too fast, or I need it to grow faster. And you're like, hey, I'm here to help because I've been down that road. That's cool to hear that you're coaching from a point of, I've been through this, not just a theoretical, like I think this is how it would work type of mindset. So that's awesome. Well, let's get into our two pack of questions that we ask every single podcast. Obviously we're the Green Country Conversations. And so I want to kind of bring it back to Green Country. If you had a free day, no meetings, the business is on autopilot for the day. We both know that doesn't happen very often or ever. So let's take this and kind of run with it. What would you do? How would you spend your day in Green Country? What do you like to do with your family? What's your perfect day?
You will find me at the lake. I love the lake.
That's awesome. What lake?
Lake Eufaula is my favorite. I like all of them.
Awesome.
Keystone and Ten Killer, they're my second favorites. But Lake Eufaula, I grew up there, and so that's my favorite lake. It's the biggest one, and I know
That's awesome.
It's like the back of my hand, so I stay there.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there's obviously a lot you can do in the lake, right? If I went to the lake with my grandpa, we're fishing, right? We're in the bass boat. We're fishing all day. If we go to the lake with my grandma, we're on the pontoon. We have, a tube behind us. So what do you like to do on the lake? What's your kind of your jam on the lake?
Oh gosh, obviously the boat. I love fishing. We actually have a cove area where we have what's it called? Yogi Park. It has like water slides and stuff like that.
We took our youth group there last year. It was amazing.
Yes, it's a really
super fun.
Park. Yeah. We love to swim. We don't mind just jumping off the boat, in the middle of the lake and go swimming. Or we can find a place.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, that's awesome. Last question here. We obviously love supporting local. I'm sure you probably do as well. So what's one local spot here in Green Country that you're like, hey, if I have someone from out of town coming in and I want to show them, a local spot, this is where I'm taking them. Maybe it's a restaurant, maybe it's a venue, maybe it's a store. What comes to mind for you on that?
Oh gosh. I'm an avid supporter about shopping local. I would say, it really depends on if it's the lake crew. I know Lake Eufaula has lots of great boutiques and lake gear and things like that. The marinas also, because those are all family owned. A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
And I know all families, go support your local marinas. They have some really cool stuff at their stores. I'm a foodie. I love food places.
Yeah.
Of course, Magnolia Soap. My friend Scotty Lawrence, she has launched a great stores that she opened. Local coffee shops. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but yeah, definitely get out there and make sure it's locally owned. Notion was my favorite, I think, for several years in Tulsa. So.
That's awesome. Well, that's awesome. Michele, I'm so appreciative of you coming on and having this conversation with me. I think there's a lot of nuggets that the listeners can take and implement either in their own business, or maybe they're on that edge and they're like, hey, I have this side business. I want to, try to make the move. What's the best way for them to get in contact with you, to find out more about your coaching and your consulting? What's their best way for them to find out about you?
They can find me on socials. Most of my handles are Coach Michele D. And Michele with one L. You could also find me at luksiconsulting.com, and that's LUKSI consulting.com.
Well, that's awesome. Everyone, I know that you probably have been taking notes this whole time and are, going to call her and get help from her. I appreciate you guys listening to this podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like the channel, follow us on YouTube. We release podcasts every week, and we'll catch you on the next one.